Welcome. Today we are going to talk about CDP Manage. For those that may have listened to the e-teller or the e-receipts video, that is simply being paperless at a teller line. With CDP Manage, you're completely paperless everywhere, not only at a bank or credit union, but at Joe's Widget Shop, at an accounting firm, at a law office, wherever. So CDP Manage is a complete document management system. And looking at this list in front of you, there are many topics that we're going to go ahead and cover today, all the way from the receiver to the virtual printer to the different capabilities to finding the documents to saving the documents to pricing to next steps. So let's go ahead and get started. So with CDP Manage, you typically will have a couple of different options down in your system tray. So one is a typical receiver. So this receiver is set up to listen to the IP address of this workstation in a specific port. What you also have is CDP Receiver DIR for Manage. That's a second way of getting documents into CDP Manage. With that way, it actually listens to a folder. I guess I'll say quote unquote listens to the folder. It's waiting for documents to be dropped into a folder. Once that document is dropped into the folder and it's completely saved to that folder, it will then grab that document, pass it to CDP Manage Messenger, and open CDP Manage. That gets used a lot for Galaxy credit unions that are looking at using loan CRs. That way, they can do send a CDP and save it to the listen folder, and the listen folder gets configured, and we'll talk about that here in a little bit. So let's go ahead and get started. Now, you can go ahead and run a test transaction. So typically, when CDP Manage is installed, it will install a test document transaction. So a couple of easy ways. Click on the Windows icon, start typing in test. You'll get test document generator. The other way to find that would be to go under CDP eSig. And then under there's typically tools, and then you'll see a test document generator there as well. So when you generate that document, it actually ends up being a 12-page document, which without CDP Manage software, that would be 12 pages that would come out on a typical laser printer. But now it captures it in CDP Manage, and it creates individual pages that you can go ahead and select and be able to go ahead and look at all those different pages. So we're in CDP Manage now. We've got this document that's come in. Think of CDP Manage as an electronic, I mentioned electronic document management, but you're really creating an electronic file, no different than you would with a paper file. So, hey, initially we got our 12 documents in there, but we know that's probably not it. When banks and credit unions are using CDP Manage or anyone, there's probably additional documents that they need to add to this quote-unquote folder to be able to have it a complete document. So let's talk a little bit about what you can do. Once the document's in here, you can begin to add additional documents that's already saved to your workstation. Clicking on Add brings up a typical select dialog box. It is looking for TIFF images, so the document that you have saved must be in a TIFF format to be able to go ahead and add it. With an attached scanner, you can then scan in additional documents, and anytime you add something to CDP Manage, it starts to build in additional pages down here. So, for example, I'm creating this loan document. The signer comes in with 2 pay stubs. I need to scan those in. As I scan those in, you'd start to see pages 13 and 14 come in here. So one of the ways of being able to make sure this is easy to work with is allowing them to go ahead and rearrange pages. How do they do that? In a typical fashion. I can pick any one of these pages, hold the left button down, I can drag and drop and bring that to wherever I want. That page 11 now became page 4, and all the other pages shifted down. The other way to do it is to right click on the page. It'll bring up this move page dialog box. This lets the user move that page anywhere in the document, and then they can go, do I reposition to that page, or do I just stay on whatever the next page 4 gets moved down to be? That way, there are people that work with CDP Manage that may have 75 pages, and if page 3 needs to be page 74, that's a long way to drag and drop that. So why not right click, say, hey, make page 3 74, and go ahead and send it. This case to show you, I'll reposition. It took that page, moved it back to page 11, and now I'm sitting on page 11. So let's move along the top here in some of the additional buttons. So there's the remove. So on any of the pages that you are currently sitting on, clicking the remove brings up this dialog box. Typically, the remove function is used to delete the page. You may have scanned in an additional page. You may have done something that you want to get that page out of there. And I encourage you to kind of look a little bit at the user guide and play around with this feature. But remove page allows you to also take that page and save it or move it to a different document that you may be using it. So it works on the individual page. You'll see along the top there's the Add to Doc feature. The Add to Doc feature really takes the entire document and moves it, or I guess I should say adds it to another document that you've already been working on, which could be saved or it could be appended document, which we'll talk about here in a second. So the difference between the two is remove focuses on one page, Add to Doc focuses on the entire document all at one time. So all right, so what do we want to do here? One of the big things is to go ahead and capture signatures. So we've got the Sig Add feature up here. As soon as you select on that, that brings a box down in here. Go ahead, and one way of moving it is to kind of left click on it, drag and drop wherever you want. I need to add a second one. I can right click down in here and it'll bring that to me. So with an attached signature pad, I highlight any of the one that I want to go ahead and capture, and I will sign, and there's my signature. This one I need to go ahead and initial, so same thing. So one of the things you'll notice is that once I have signed the signature box, I can no longer move it. That's by design and for security features. If you have someone sign a document and they initial here that they do not want additional insurance as an example, you don't want to be able to move that to a different area of that document, which makes it seem like they did want additional insurance as an example. Also, because we're using signature pad to capture this, we do also capture biometric information. How hard did they press? How quickly did they sign? All that saved off with this document back in the database. If this document is ever challenged, there's a way that we can go ahead and compare someone signing a signature pad again versus how they signed that. Never had that case, but it's something for you to know that actually exists. Continue to move along the top. We can print that document. Someone's sitting there, they actually want an electronic or a paper copy of it. You can go ahead and print, opens up a typical print dialog box, and they can go ahead and print that for that signer. Rotate is typically used when documents are scanned in. Maybe it's scanned in with the orientation off. Use the rotate left or right to be able to get that to a readable format. And we talked about Add to Doc already. So as you notice here, the save, the pending, and the web sign are all inactive right now. What's the reason for that? Well, the reason for that is we have not set this document up to say who's it for and how do we categorize it. That becomes important to be able to go ahead and find this document at a later date. Over here on the right, you'll notice the type button. So selecting on type brings what we call the group type dialog box. Now what you're seeing here is completely customized to each individual account that gets set up. So as a good example, you'll notice loans, that's considered a group, and then boat, new auto, loan, and RV are considered type. So again, this can be customized. We work with the customer to kind of determine what works best for them and then go ahead and set that up. These can always be changed or typically added at a later date. So they may come back at a later time using this example and say, hey, we're now going to start offering used auto. Can we go ahead and add that? Yes, we can. There's a way within the configuration setup that we can go ahead and add that. So let's use this as an example of new auto. Now that I've selected on new auto, it used a description in the date to populate the description. It pre-populated this information. Now this only works with our test document, and it also, because we've set it up to work with Galaxy. So we have a integration with Galaxy where in most cases they will pass over some information to be able to parse the print job and to be able to go ahead and capture it and populate this stuff. But in most cases this may be blank, and the typical person working with would go ahead and add some description information. Again, this allows you to search for it at a later time and be able to kind of narrow down what exactly it is. So there's also a comments down here in the lower right, and that is typically used for workflow, just general comments that the signer won't see. Many times they'll, if different people have to work on different aspects of the document, they may use the groups and types to move that document from one group type to another, and it shows up in the other group and type. They'll someone knows they need to work on it, and they can kind of add the comments to know what happened. As you'll notice, once I did that, the web sign, the pending, and the save button all became active. So what do those do? Web sign is our integration with our CDP web sign, or as it's currently called, CDP eSign. When that is selected, That will then minimize this document or close it out, and it will launch the web sign. And there's other videos that will show you exactly how that integration works and how you can go ahead and move it back and forth. Pending is used to be able to pen the document in that it's not done, it's not finalized yet, it's still being worked on. It's a great way to be able to work on a CDP Manage document, get it set up before that signer actually comes in, and have it all ready for that signer. So you're not going through and you're not adding signature boxes and you're not rearranging pages and you're not doing some of the other stuff that you might do while that signer is sitting there in front of you. You set that up, you go ahead and get it all ready and you pend it, and then you bring it out of pending when that person comes in to sign. It's also used frequently with banks and credit unions who have signers, multiple signers for the document, and they're signing on different branches. So if I've got a husband and wife, the husband could come in one branch, they could sign their portion of it, pend it, it can be opened up in another branch, and have the wife sign it. You know, in a paper world, that has to be somehow faxed, it's emailed, it's, I don't know, courier serviced over, somehow it gets over there. With the pended feature, they can go ahead and pull it up in any one of the branches. Finally, there's save. Save is used when you are completely done with the document. You've captured all your signatures, you've scanned everything in that you need, your pages are in the right order, everything is indexed for you, and you're ready to say, I have completed this document and I'm good to go. So one of the things to notice is that these images or these pages right here are technically behind the scene. They're TIFF images, and when I click on save, what it does is, and you'll see this, it'll combine all the TIFF images into one PDF that's basically sealed and encrypted, so that the data, if the data changes, it could be flagged that this document has been compromised. So I'm going to select on the save button. This will minimize down and save away back into the database. So while we're at the screen, let's talk a little bit about some of the other stuff that's going along the top here. So document inquiry. Inquiry, I'll show you this in a second, really allows you to go ahead and find any documents that's in the database, regardless if they're in a saved or appended feature. New is what you would expect. It creates a new blank document and you can begin building your files off of that. Batch import is a way that CDP Manage can be set up so that it can actually import documents in bulk, if you want to look at it like that. So a lot of times when people start using CDP Manage, they're beginning paperless that point forward, but they've had months, years, decades of paper. And how do they get those into CDP Manage? Well, part of it is using a high-speed scanner. You kind of bulk scan all that information into a folder, and then you're able to, with CDP Manage, bring those bulked scanned images in one by one. Select scanner here. So what you're allowed to pick different scanners as you're working with CDP Manage. So when once you have a CDP Manager installed on, a scanner installed on your workstation, it will show up in a list here, and then you can go ahead and select it and say, this is the scanner that I'm going to use when I'm working with this. A lot of times support calls will come in where someone said, hey, I was using this scanner, I just installed a new one. It's still looking for the old scanner in CDP Manage when I click the scan button. How do you get around that? Document, select scanner, go ahead and pick that new one and it'll go ahead and work. Tools. Tools requires a login. Different logins depending on what database it's set up, but the typical one is probably Carswell. So once I've logged in, I now have all these that have become active to me. The group type index one here, this is where we can go ahead and set up the group types and index. So I mentioned earlier when I was showing that those can be added at any point. So we go ahead, click add, go ahead and add a new group. I can click down here, I can add a new type under accounts payable. Typically we want someone at CDP to do this. There's a lot of stuff that goes on behind the scenes that it's not very user friendly, and if they end up removing something that they shouldn't, it could really impact how the data is stored and what they have going on there. So we always recommend that someone from CDP typically adds or removes that information. Back under tools, member tags and map forms, I'm not going to get into. They're a little bit more advanced. Setup is a big one. This is where the configurations comprised of CDP Manage are all stored, and these are actually stored in a INI file that's located in the directory, but this gives you a user interface to be able to go ahead and make those changes. The important ones as I'm looking at here is the website, the web service. So CDP Manage on the workstation talks to the database through a web service, and this is where you go ahead and you configure it to make sure that it's connected properly. I talked about the integration of CDP WebSign / eSign with CDP Manage. This is where you enter in the URL to kind of build that integration. Tablet is really the signature pad, so this is where you configure a little bit about what that signature pad and how that works. The PCL information is really just how CDP Manage knows where to look for files, where it saves files, where it handles certain information like that. All the way down to the CDP receiver DIR, we talked about the CDP Manage being able to actually monitor or listen to a directory, and when files get put in there, that it will go ahead and recognize it and bring it into CDP Manage. And this is where you configure what directory it actually listens to and some other timeout functions that I'm not going to get into today. Users. Users allow you to set up, so there's a way that it can be set up so that CDP Manager does require each person to log in. We typically don't do that. There are a few credit unions that are using that feature, but it's a little bit cumbersome because it does require them to log in each time. How we've leveraged the user scenarios, and more of this will come out when we start looking at the eSign video, is to be able to set up who has access to eSign and what groups and types do they have access to. That's all done within the user setup field here. Pending document lock. So only one person can be working on a CDP Manage document at a time. When they have it in edit mode, then it's actually locked and other people can actually view it, but they can't click on it and actually do any work with it. Well, certain times things happen where that document does need to be unlocked. Someone may have gone for the day when you have access to it. Maybe CDP Manage crashed and that document is stuck in a locked state. Through this interface, you're able to go ahead and unlock that document so other people can view it and be able to have access to it. And then I'm not going to touch about the web service list. These other ones, what I would say is Windows. You can work on multiple CDP Manage documents at the same time. Typical Windows type functionality where you would see document 1, document 2, document 3. As you drop down this list, you can pick that one. It'll make that document the active one. So it's not required that you only have one managed document working at the same time. There is the ability to be able to go ahead and bring that document in, multiple documents in, and be able to kind of toggle back and forth. So let's go ahead and look a little bit at the inquiry. So this, as I mentioned earlier, is where you can go ahead and you can see any of the documents in the database that are either in a pended or a saved state. How do you tell? So first of all, you'll see these little parentheses with numbers next to them. That's showing you how many documents are saved under that specific group and type. So in this case, we have 1 boat loan. Under Dave, we have 6 under loans, and this is kind of a test database, so everyone's kind of making their own groups and types and going ahead and getting it set up. You'll notice down here, further down, that there's 73 pended documents there. So if I select on that, these numbers go ahead and they start to change. So I'll go back, and the one we were looking at was a new auto loan. So I can go ahead and select that, and I can filter down either by the description, the member number, different specifics over here. But I'll just do a regular wildcard search. So let me grab this one. This is the one that we were working with earlier. So you'll notice, and it could be a little confusing, it shows page 1, but it's really, because it's a PDF, it's a 12-page PDF document. You scroll through, I'll get down to page 12, that's where I signed, and you'll start to see the signatures that I captured. You'll see some of the indexing information over here that we worked on, and everything else related to this. And there's the ability to be able to re-index and do certain things while you have it in this stage. I can save this document. If I make changes over here, I can print it out at this point. I can add or scan in additional documents, but what that's going to do is it's going to actually build a page 2, and then you'll have another set that you can go ahead and toggle back. Once you save a document in CDP Manage, we don't give you the ability to be able to break that open. As I mentioned earlier, it's encrypted and it's kind of locked. We don't let you break that open and be able to go ahead and start inserting pages or rearranging or doing certain things. You kind of build a supplement that's under the same document ID umbrella, but it's kind of working together along that path. So a couple of the other things that I wanted to touch on, we kind of went through a lot, is the CDP Manage virtual printer. So I think we talked a little bit about these things here, but what the CDP Manage virtual printer is it gets installed as another print option when CDP Manage is installed. And it pretty much allows you to print any document. It can be a web page, it can be an Excel spreadsheet, it can be something from Notepad, it can be an email, whatever it is that you need to get into CDP Manage. Really, you leverage that CDP Manage virtual printer. So looking at this CDP Manage document here, File, Print, you'll notice that right here is the CDP Manage virtual printer. If I hit print, that kind of routes that job through our receiver and it would launch in CDP Manage. So it's a great way, kind of a catch-all to be able to get documents in CDP Manage, any type of document that you want to go ahead and get in, and you would need to index that information. So looking at this document and the last two steps that we, or last two items that we have here is pricing. So currently CDP Manage is priced as a one-time per license cost, where it's running about $945 one time for that license, and then we charge roughly $25 per month maintenance support. That maintenance support is really set up to be able to, one, give the user access to call our 800 number and be able to work through any issues that they might have. And as we roll out upgrades and bug fixes, they can go ahead and have free upgrades to those without having to pay it. So it gives them a lot of bang for their buck to be able to go ahead and pay that maintenance and support. So next steps. I encourage you to kind of start playing around with CDP Manage. Take a look at the user guide. Take a look at the frequently asked questions. Definitely get in there and start playing around. You know, open up a web page and virtually print that into CDP Manage. Work a little bit with indexing information, rearrange pages, really get familiar with what it can and cannot do, so you're able to truly, be proficient in there. Don't be afraid to go in there and kind of look at a little bit of the settings and see some of the stuff that they do. But it's a good tool. It's designed really to take a document that you really need to capture signatures and you really need to look at it from a paper management standpoint. So hopefully you were able to get some information out of this. You may have to watch this a few times to be able to fully grasp everything, but ask questions and go ahead and play. Thanks a lot. Hope you learned about CDP Manage.